Hi, in today's video, I just kind of want to go through Luminar for portrait editing workflow. The idea is that we've got a photograph here. We're not going to necessarily try and talk about all the tools as a demonstration of the tools, but rather than that, the workflow that I go through when I'm working on a portrait. Hi, my name is William Beem. If you're new here, I am a portrait photographer in Central Florida, and I'm here to try and help you understand your post-processing tools and organizational tools a little bit better. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started with this portrait. Okay, I've got this photo loaded from Adobe Stock. If you're interested in this, or if you want to get 10 free photos from Adobe Stock, I will link below. So you'll see a link to get the 10 free photos if you want to sign up on Adobe Stock, and also a link to this specific file in case you want to work on this one yourself. Again, it's from Adobe Stock. It's not one of my own portraits. I chose this one because, first off, it's not one of the ones in Adobe Stock or most other stock agencies where everything is polished and perfectly ready to go. In most cases, that's what you want from a stock agency. But this one, you can see they haven't really gone through and done skin smoothing. There's a little bit of shine on her forehead and maybe on her cheek. And there's just a few things that we can go ahead and do some portrait retouching. The first thing I really want to do when I'm looking at this is identify the problem areas. As we were just talking about, the shine, skin smoothing. I think her eyes look lovely. I think her teeth look lovely. We can probably enhance that just a little bit. And let's see what happens when we get started off. The first thing I always do with any photograph, if I'm opening up in Luminar directly, is I'll go over to the canvas and I want to check lens and geometry. And you can just kind of take a quick look here and see, is there anything that you need to fix? And I'm just sliding this a little bit. I think that looks just a little bit better. Let's do a quick before and after. I think there was just a little bit that needed to make her pop out just a tad more. So I'm actually a little happier with that. And that's all I'm going to do here right now. We're going to come back to the canvas later and use either the erase or the clone and stamp. We're going to be working on fixing up some areas over here that I see, like right down here and a couple of spots. But before I start doing manual effort, I want to see what the AI tools can do for me. Then I'm going to go back and clean up areas that perhaps the AI tools missed or didn't do quite as well that we wanted to. Overall, I'm happy with the exposure on the photograph, so I'm not going to go to the light. I'm going to go straight into the portrait tab, and let's start with the skin. So we know that we need to have some shine removal, so I'm going to bring that up about halfway, and I'm also going to bring up the skin enhancer. Between 25 and 30 is usually where I like to start, and I think this shine enhancer is probably going to have to go all the way over for this particular photo. And let's go before and after. Yeah, you can see that it really did a great job fixing up the shine here and down here. So I'm happy with that. Little specular highlights like this, I don't mind so much in a portrait, but you don't want to have big blotches of shiny. Now, as far as her skin, I'm going to go ahead and select AI Skin Defects Removal. And let's zoom in just a bit and take a closer look at her face. In this particular portrait, I want to keep a rather natural look. So I'm not going to take the skin enhancer all the way over. I mean, to show as an example, if we took it all the way over, we can do that and then see what happens as a result to her portrait. And to me, this is where it starts looking fake. It's just very overly softened, and I don't want to do that to her. So I'm going to bring this back down, in this case, about 35 or 36. And that way we've still got texture. We've still got, I don't know what to call them as far as little spots, but I'm not necessarily worried about that on this particular portrait. What I am worried about are things like this little imperfection down here, and I want to get rid of things that don't belong. We've done a fair amount of the AI skin enhancement. The shine removal, I think we had to move all the way over. Before I get into the portrait enhancer, I want to go back to the canvas tools and do some clone and stamp. All right, so if you've never used the clone and stamp tool before, you see this little spot. Basically, it's asking you to select a source. And you can see it right here. Click to set the source. I'm going to click just above this, and this brush is way too large for an object that's this size. So I'm going to get something about this size, and you see as I go back and forth, they're linked. And that way I can just quickly and easily remove a little imperfection. And it stays like this. So if this still works for you, let's say there's a little area over here. I'll just brush that away. And I'm holding down the space bar, and I'm looking for other areas where I just may need to touch up just a little bit. And so, for example, this little space right over here, And this one, I'm not going to go and hit every spot over here. This area up top here, I might go back and I'm holding down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows, and I might just want to try and clean up a little bit over here. And it's really very simple. I'm using a Wacom pen, and I'm just kind of going with very small adjustments and just cleaning up some skin texture and leaving it at that. Let me go scroll down a little bit. I think this spot by her eye might be another one where we want to do something. So I'm going to reselect over here and just hit that. And there's a spot over here. So I'm going to select this area and move this. Now you can get into some really fine movements. So for example, like this one little hair, if that's bothering you, again, do the same thing. Hold down the Alt or Option key, select an area, and then just move right up and you take that right out. There was one fine hair over here. And the idea of resampling is to making sure that you're picking skin both in color, luminosity, and texture that's similar to the area that you want to fix. Now, some things I'm clearly not going to fix. So like this little thing over here looks like a mole. That's part of who she is. I think this down here on her neck is something that we could probably work with, though. It probably shouldn't be there. And I'm just going to slowly move that around. And let me resample one more spot. There's part of that I want to get. And there you go. It's really that simple. If you work with small moves, you can fix these little imperfections rather easily. Now, if you're doing this with a mouse, I think it's going to be much more difficult. But if you're doing it with a Wacom pen and Intuos 5, a tablet that I have, that just really makes it so much more natural to try and come up with making these fine moves. Down here, I'm not going to touch, like, if there's a mole here and a mole there, unless a client specifically requested it, I wouldn't touch something like that because that's part of who she is. And people are going to see this photo and they're going to say, well, I know you had this retouched because, this mole isn't there and I know that's part of you. So unless there is a specific request, I would not touch something like that. But a little thing where it looks like it may be an imperfection, like a blemish rather than a mole, I would go ahead and touch up. A little bit of reddish skin is something you could go ahead and fix. All right, that's all I'm going to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And that's the end of our clone and stamp work. Let's go back to the portrait tab. And I want to go into the AI portrait enhancer. So to do this, I'm going to back off. We're at 200%. I'm going to go ahead and say fit to screen. And I'm going to give just a little bit of face light. I think this is something that can be easily overdone. I'm going to go around between 15 and 20. Now, I mentioned I really like her eyes. I think she's got beautiful eyes, and I don't see any need for red eye removal. The whites of her eyes look okay, but I'm going to see what happens if I move this up a little bit. But it can, again, between 15 and 20. And I don't see any need to try and move that any further. The eye enhancer is kind of fun. I'm going to move that between 25 and 30 to see what happens. And what you're looking for here, let's zoom in again for the eyes. What you're looking for here is a little bit more clarity, a little bit more contrast, and maybe a little bit of color boost. All of those things are going to be coming out from the eye enhancer. But if you look at the eye itself, for fun, not for real, I'm going to go ahead and put the eye enhancer all the way up to 100. And you see, that just makes her look crazy. So this is why you don't necessarily want to use these tools all out unless there's an overwhelming reason why you need to do so. Sometimes the eyes aren't lit very well, and maybe you do need to do the eye enhancer or the whitening that much. In this case, clearly not. We're going to go ahead and bring her down to about 27. And I think that looks much better than where we started. This little area underneath her eyes is not terrible, but I'm going to go ahead and take the dark circles remover over at about 30. And it's just going to make a nice little difference in here. If you're never sure if you're seeing the results or not, take the slider all the way over to 100 and then pull it back halfway. And you can definitely see the difference between 100 and 50. As you get more practice with it, you'll see if you need it that high or not. I don't think so. I think it's natural to have just a little bit of shadow in here. She is not in a bad position with darkness. All right, I'm going to back off to 100% now. The next one, slim face. This one's one where you want to be careful with. I always use it. I like it. And what's more, people who have their portrait taken like it too. But you have to do it very, very subtly so they don't know that you've done something to warp their face. And I would take it probably around 15. And it was a very subtle little change right here. And it just makes them look a little bit better. Not like you're warping who they are. It's just a little bit better, like you're seeing them on their best day. The other thing to do is with enlarging the eyes. People relate to portrait subjects mostly through their eyes. I like to go ahead and bring up to about 30. It's not a very over-the-top look, but it's just something that helps people connect with your portrait subject. Now, improving the eyebrows is one of the tools here that I think it works very well on brunettes or black hair. I'm very cautious about using it on redheads or blondes because as you improve the eyebrows, it darkens as well as adds to. And to show that, I'm going to pull this all the way over. And you can see this has just gotten really, really black. And it's too black even for her. So I'm cautious about this. Usually I will take this down between 25 and 30. And I think it enhances the eyebrows a little bit, but it's not over the top. It's not an unbelievable amount. If you pull it all the way up, it really starts to look fake. And again, with different colors, hairs that are lighter or red hair, it just doesn't work because then it makes everybody look like they have black eyebrows. This next session is working on lips and teeth. She's got lovely teeth. And let me start at the bottom here with whitening. The same thing with eye whitening. Eye whites are never truly white. Teeth are never truly white. There is a little bit of yellow in teeth, and it should have a little bit of yellow in teeth. If I bring this teeth whitening all the way up, she's going to look like a flashlight. And this is one of the better jobs that I've seen done. But still, it's too much. I'm going to pull this down to 50% and see how it looks. And even that might be more than I want. I'm going to bring it back down to 25 to 30. And to me, that's a happy place. I usually start with teeth and most of these tools between 25 and 30. Going over the 50% mark or 50 points, whatever you want to call these numbers, usually gets into an area where things are too much if that's on a well-exposed photograph. If it's on a photograph that's a bit darker and you need to compensate for it, then I would say that's why the sliders are so powerful that you can take them up there. You may need them on some portraits that just don't have, enough light on them. And that's why the face light is a wonderful tool. All right, so let's go into the lips. We've got saturation, redness, and darkening. I think this is a matter of personal taste, and also keep in mind what your subject wants. Here, she doesn't have a lot of saturation, redness, or darkening. I'm going to pull each one of those up to about the same point, to about 30, 31. And I'm just going to look at the results. So this is where we were after the skin enhancer, but before the portrait enhancer. And then let's turn the portrait enhancer back on. The changes are very subtle, but her eyes stand out more. Her teeth stand out. And more than that, she doesn't look like she's been processed or enhanced. She looks like a real person who had a great photo taken of her. And that's the look that I'm going for in this case. Now, there is one more thing that I like to do, and I showed this once before in a different video, but let's go ahead and do it again. We're going to come over to the Essentials tab, and we're going to go to black and white conversion. The idea is her skin looks a bit muted. If you want to enhance what her skin looks like as far as the color and the glow, black and white is actually the best way to do it. We're going to convert it to black and white. We're going to hit the saturation, and we're going to move up the reds and yellows because that's going to bring the color back. I said in the previous video, I usually start off around like 125 or so. I'm going to do the same thing with the yellows. And now we've got in my mind, kind of a better look to her skin tone. It's not quite as desaturated as it was before. I've tried this with color, and you can kind of get some of the same results with color, but color doesn't push quite as far as if you do the black and white conversion and then the saturation. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at before. This is the photo where we started, and this is where we are now. So those are just a couple of techniques that you can use for your portraits. I hope this is helpful to you. Now, we probably still want to come back over and do a little bit of sharpening because I always want to do sharpening. So I'm going to bring up sharpening just a tad, and I'm going to go into the advanced settings. And what I'm going to look at is my sharpening radius and my sharpening masking. If you bring the radius up, it's going to be sharpening more on larger objects. That's not necessarily what I want to do. I'm going to bring this down, but I'm going to bring my masking up. The idea of the masking is that it will try to refine the edges where you're doing your sharpening. So for example, on this gray area, we don't need to apply any sharpening to that. There are no edges here. There's nothing to detect. But we do want to see, like in her eyes, the edges of her nose, her teeth and lips, and her hair. Those are things that need to have some sharpening done. So, and this is what she looks like after the sharpening. Let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. And I'm really happy. I can see sharpening, on her eyelashes, in the iris of her eye. I can see it on her teeth and on her lips. You can see it on her hair. So to me, this is kind of right where I want to be. It looks like a comfortable, natural portrait, but just a little bit better than it was coming straight out of camera. You can still do a few other things. So for example, if you want, we can come over here and move the AI accent and see what we get. It gave us like a little bit of a glow behind her. And in this case, I kind of like that. So I don't know what's going on inside of the AI accent entirely, but it might be looking at this and saying, oh, that's a portrait. Why don't I put a spotlight behind her? And I thought, you know what? That's a nice idea. I like that as well. You can do some more fine tuning with AI structure. Some people like putting a glow on the person. So there's a glow tool right here. I'm a little hesitant with that. There are times when I do it when I'm doing like over the top with a high key look and adding a glow on top of it. I really do like that look. But for this type of portrait where like this is a headshot that you might be using in business, I would leave that kind of the way it is. Last thing I might think of is going up to light and pulling the exposure down just maybe half a stop. Because to my eye, I think her face was just a little too bright overall. I kind of like her skin tone better the way it is now. You could do more things with, if you wanted to do color toning, but for a portrait workflow overall, I spent more time talking than I did actually working on this. I could probably have this done in 5 minutes. So this is an idea of the workflow that I go through. What I'm looking at is texture, tone, and color. So we started off working with texture, and to me, the part of that was the canvas where we were doing the lens and geometry. I also want to make sure that I'm looking at texture on her face and skin. Is there anything I needed to replace? So that's why we did the skin tools and also the clone and stamp tools. Tone would have been basically our work on shadows and highlights. And we didn't really have a need to do too much here. We could have gone into advanced contrast and done more with that, but I didn't feel the need. Also, the portrait tool is kind of dealing with some of our overall tone as far as the brightness of the teeth, the contrast in the iris, and also the whitening of the eyes. The last part, color, we did a little bit with the lips as far as saturation and redness and darkness. But overall, we didn't really change colors on her, as we could continue to do so. If I wanted to do split toning, that would be something I'd do towards the end of it. If you found this useful, please go ahead and share it with a friend. I would love it if you would go ahead and like this video. I'm going to be doing more videos like this with Luminar 4 and also some other tools. So please subscribe and go ahead and hit the bell icon so you'll get notified when a new video comes out. And thanks so much. We'll see you again in the next video.